Says we're
Hey,
live.
we are live on the air. Can people hear me? We're trying this for the second time, and I want to know if my mouth has sound coming out of it going through the electricity and wires and internet that you can hear. So please let me know.
Yes. And can you hear me too?
Also important, not as important, but also
Not
important.
as important. And can you hear yourself? Can you hear it all? Because if you can't, then
We are checking the chat right now for confirmation. For those just joining us, this is our second attempt. The first attempt, for some reason, my audio was not working. Even though Mike and I could hear each other, no one could hear me.
I'm
Well,
not sure if they do.
let's proceed, assuming that they can hear us.
Okay. Sounds good.
All right. So just to recap, this is Mike and Gaz's comic book weekly roundup. Well, the week is 168 hours, and we were inspired by Cory, Kerr, and Joshua Kemble doing their 48-hour check-in. Cory Kerr here as we speak, and he can hear us, so excellent.
Hey,
But you know
sweet.
what? He
Thanks,
has an
Cory.
awesome theme song for his show about 40-hour check-ins, and we have an awesome theme song for our 168. Would you like
Oh,
to give
yeah.
it to the people there, Mikey?
All right, here we go.
All right.
What's on our plate? It's 168. It's gonna be great. That's 168. I don't know the rest, but it's not 48. Hey, it's 168. Yo.
Yo,
Hooah!
you got a little Al Pacino in there. I like it. Yeah, so this is our 168 check-in, which means once a week. We started last week, Tuesday, around the same time, and now we are back to see, hey, did we follow through on all of our big claims? Because the premise of the show, as set up in the original version and in our version, is to keep each other accountable publicly as fellow artists working on our comic projects and other things, not for our client work, not for things that we do for money or that we have to do for our day job, but the art we do for love and the art we do to express ourselves and, you know, get into a different plane of existence art-wise. That's a weird way to say it, but you know, anything that we don't have to do that we're making time to do and making sure we do it. Primarily among that our comic, but sometimes other things as well. So we got together, we gave a list of things that we wanted to accomplish by this week, and now we're going to see if that happened. So, Mr. Mike Emirates, creator of Space Cat Comics, among other things, would you like to go over what you promised and see if you did it?
Sure. All right.
Okay.
Well, okay, here. I got a little slideshow thing that I'm going to play while I'm kind of talking about that.
Whoa.
I know. We got advanced this time around. Let's see if I could actually get this to work, though.
Okay.
Okay. It looks like it works. Now to do this.
Does it smell like it works?
It smells a little funny, but I think we'll be okay. All right. So this is just going to be a random smattering of stuff in no particular order, but at least it's some kind of visual instead of staring at my ugly mug. So, okay. The main things that I want to accomplish this week was to have a better idea of what I wanted to accomplish next week. and I do, actually. As silly as that sounded, like I had other plans, but I really just wanted a better grip on exactly what it was that I was trying to do. And so this week, the first thing that I did was I made up some spreadsheets, actually, which are not in this slideshow because that would be really boring to look at. And some of it is kind of personal and I don't really want to share. But I've got, maybe I'll show you after the show, actually. I've got my year kind of divided into the short term, the midterm, and then the end of the year. So that even though I'm not kind of planning maybe very specifically week by week, I have my year blocked out into, you know, sections, essentially thirds of like when roughly would I like to have these things accomplished, you know? And so I thought that would be good to kind of keep me on track. I really wanted to spend like a whole month just planning and getting development stuff together for this comic. But if I look at my original plan, I wanted to have this done in like the midterm. I wanted to have it done by the end of the summer pretty much. And if I'm going to do that, I can't spend a month on all that planning kind of stuff. I really have to get my ass in gear. And so anyways, we could talk about that a little bit later with like the next week kind of plans. So I did that. And then I've got, I went a little step further and just got a little more laser focused on my overall goals too, not just like weekly or this year, but like what exactly am I trying to accomplish and what are some of the steps for that, you know, things that I'd like to work towards. Because I find when I don't have like something that I'm working towards, I will easily just get lost and go and just fill my time, you know.
Right.
That's not always working towards anything. So that was a big thing for me, was getting a better handle on my plans. One of the other things was commission pricing. I've done that to a point. There's some things that I just am not comfortable. I'm not even comfortable taking on the work yet, let alone
Right.
coming up with how much I should charge for it. So
Well,
I
you could come up with prices and just not be open for commissions right now, but have,
that's
you know what I
true.
mean? It's
That
two
is
different
true.
things.
That's a good point. But I did hash out some pricing for things that I've been asked about. I'm not open for commissions. I don't want to be anytime soon, but I do get asked, and
Right.
occasionally I do want to take on those things that I get asked about that are up my alley. You know,
Mhm.
and so now I can actually get back to these people and pursue that and see if I can follow through with some of those commissions, because I couldn't before, and it was a lot easier than I thought that it was going to be. It was just
Yeah.
a matter of sitting down and thinking about it. Whether they're actually good prices or not, I don't know. But this, to me, is it makes my time worth it to do that kind
Right.
of work. If I can't make this, then I might as well make nothing, to be honest, and just
Right.
continue working
No,
on my.
I absolutely agree with that. I mean, prices are different for everybody, and only you know how much work you're going to put into it and how much it's worth it. And if
Yeah,
people aren't willing to pay that, well, then you don't do it.
yeah.
It's
And it's kind of sucks because, like, I would like to take on more work, but I was talking with Mel, as I often do, about everything, and doing a little bit of soul searching this week too while I was thinking about it. And it was like, that's in my plan. That's my last resort. That's what I know I have to do if
mhm,
the rest of this doesn't work. And I feel like committing so wholeheartedly to wanting to open up commissions was a little bit of me like admitting early defeat. And I was kind of like maybe even disguising it as like preparation, but preparation for what? For failure. Like, I'm sitting here tricking myself into believing that, yeah, you're gonna fail, and so you better get ready, when I've
huh.
got like 2 years left on my 5-year plan, and it's only going better. So I don't know.
Well,
I feel like I need to retrain my brain a bit and get a little bit more pumped and excited and get a little bit more confidence again.
I understand. I understand exactly what you're saying. That you don't want to like plan for failure and assume you're going to fail and all that. I get that, and you don't want to. You're right. But at the same time, I don't think taking commissions is failure in the sense that like it's not like and again, failure is all subjective in what you want. So what I'm about to say, I
True.
don't mean to insult anybody, but failure, that it's not like giving up and getting a day job or going and working at a studio or taking on client work just to pay the bills. Like all that stuff is perfectly valid. I've done it, we've all done it, but you might consider that a failure of your current state, which is also valid. However, lots of artists who are working on their own independent comic or are famous or successful or kind of at where you or I might want to be, the only work they will take is like commission work. You know what
Right.
I mean? Because they could take a commission to do a single character illustration and knock that out in an afternoon, and it's not committing to a huge project, which is which is what I've tried to do. I still take commissions, I still take client work, but nothing that's going to take me weeks and months. Only something I can do in a day or two. Because worst case scenario, I spend a day or two doing it, I get right back on my own stuff. So
Right.
consider that you could be in a position to take commissions and you haven't failed anything, and you could still be working on your comic and other stuff full time and just do a few commissions on the side.
True. Well, and that's kind of what I was getting at. That's more or less the conclusion that I came to, is rather than like announcing it and really pushing it, just having that information available when people do ask me, and then I can kind of decide on a job by job basis if it's something that I want to take on and if it's going to be overwhelming or not. Because
Right.
for a while there, I was actually starting to settle into like, well, I need to just start making a bunch of prints, and I need to start taking a bunch of commissions. And over this last weekend, really thinking about that, I was like, when am I ever going to have time to work on my comics if that's what I'm doing? Like,
Right.
if that's what I'm doing, great. And that's totally a viable way to make money. And that
Absolutely.
is on my list of things to do at some point. But where I'm at now, it's going to take over. Like,
Yeah.
I'm a very much a one thing at a time kind of person. So for as much as I would like to just start making money right now, Mel and I have both committed to this path and have put a lot of faith and effort into this and trying to make this work. We believe that this is ultimately the best thing for me to do, is to be getting stuff done, getting comics done so that I can get comic work, if anything, not necessarily taking on commissions, but maybe hooking up with a writer or two and getting on a book, that kind of thing.
Well,
because that's
especially yeah, if you don't have to make money right now, then yeah, you could always do prints later. And it's if you have a book or two out, it's a lot easier to go to a show with a book or two and then, oh, I'm going to whip up a new print for this show, as
right.
opposed to let me hurry up and make a book. So
Yeah.
I agree with that. Do you want to talk a little bit about what we're looking at? Because you got a lot of cool designs coming up, and
Yeah.
I kind of know what it is, but no one else does.
This is true. Well, actually, that leads into one of the things that I wanted to do actually was getting some work done on my style guide for my comic that I'm working on right now. So I'm gonna stop the slideshow and I'm actually gonna share a couple things really quick here for some context. Let's see how do I do that though? Maybe
Is it on your computer?
it is on my computer. I just need to.
Screen share, like you
I'm
just were. I don't understand.
well, the software that I'm using is weird. It doesn't let me go back and forth.
You're
So,
all fancy. I just have a bunch of JPEGs I open.
well, that's good too. Oh shit!
Well,
What?
so as you're doing that, I will recap. The goals that I remember you talking about for this week were getting a more tangible plan, which it looks like you've worked on at least in the macro scale,
Mhm.
and also doing some design and style guides for your upcoming short comic, which was what we were just looking at.
Yes.
And that's what was it called again? Sisyphus complex?
Sisyphean complex, but
Sisyphean complex. I
yeah.
apologize. And can we talk about what your intentions for that story are in the short term, like what you want to do with it,
Yeah,
or
I'm actually it's a series and it's kind of an ongoing series. It's more of like it has a story, but it's more of like a formula of a kind of story that I want to tell. So it's very much like a spy versus spy type of thing. I'm talking about spy versus spy from Mad Magazine, where
right?
you kind of know what you're getting every issue. You know, it's going to be a little bit more of the same, maybe a different take on the same sort of premise. That's essentially what this is at its heart. I'm submitting it to heavy metal because that's kind of always been a dream of mine. I love heavy metal. That like rocked my world and opened me up to a whole new kind of art that I didn't know even existed. And that seems to be like that in 2000 AD seem to be the places that you can really find that kind of art. I don't even see that very much in other things, except for maybe like Tank Girl and some stuff that's been put out by Dark Horse.
Right.
That kind of thing. But so I really want to be a part of that. And it got into my head like a year or two ago when I met Ralph Singh, who he was on, I think he was on one of my creator hangouts at one point. I'm pretty sure, at least for like a brief period. But anyways, he had submitted a story to Heavy Metal and he's actually publishing through them, not in the magazine, but through the publishing side of things over there.
Right.
And so after talking to him back and forth, he kind of encouraged me that it's maybe not as hard as I think that it is, and that I should just kind of go for it. And so
Right.
I was
Well, you
experimenting with like a style that maybe could get into there with Julie Jupiter, which is the comic that I did for um,
the
the
Hundredth
Life in
anthology.
Space anthology.
Right.
And without really mentioning it at the time, a lot of people immediately associated it with heavy metal. And so I was like, great. And so that was kind of like a success. This is not gonna look like Julie Jupiter at all, though. I'm just like with everything I do, I'm experimenting and trying completely new things.
Right. But having seen 2000 AD and heavy metal and both of these pieces of your work, while they don't look the same, they both do have that vibe because both those magazines have a lot of different styles, but there's a
Oh
certain
yeah,
vibe to it, and you definitely are nailing that.
cool. Thank you. Yeah, so this actually, what's on the screen now, kind of, because I could talk about it a lot, but what's on the screen now is actually a concept that I've had in my head for a long time, but it's just one of those, it was kind of daunting because there's so many figures and a lot of overlap and whatnot. This is actually like a tiny thumbnail. It's like 2 inches by 3 inches in my sketchbook, and I just blew it up and colored it,
Oh, so you
which
didn't
made it a
copy
lot.
or paste any of those background versions of the character, like that you drew each one?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. I'm
Yeah.
lazy. I would have drawn like three and then just flipped them and resized them and spun them.
Yeah, that probably would have been better, but
No, yours is probably better. Mine's just more efficient.
I was also like just kind of I did a lot of work on this kind of away from my computer. I'm trying to just kind of split things up a little bit more so that I don't feel so. I end up feeling really confined working inside all the time, and especially working in the same space all the time. So I've been trying to like get out and draw in the park, or at least draw in the living room with the window open, that kind of thing. So yeah, I
Whatever
just did
works.
it all in a little thumbnail. But So I've had this idea in my head for a while, and this actually kind of encapsulates the whole kind of premise. It's the whole
Right.
sexy femme fatale thing, a little bit of the guns and violence, and it sort of implies action, and excitement. And then all the dead bodies, they're actually like versions of her. It's sort of alluding to the fact that in every issue she dies. That's
Right.
like not a big spoiler because it just is what it is. It's the premise that it's built on, and knowing that shouldn't actually spoil the overall experience for you, because it's supposed to be sort of something that you can enter in at any issue and not necessarily have to know about the previous one. You'll be just as confused if you started at
Right.
the beginning compared to the middle.
Right. I
And so,
also like that you have on the dead bodies, you don't see a lot of blood and stuff, and you see little cartoon X's on their
yeah,
eyes. So to me, it says like, yeah, there's a lot of death, but it's not that serious. It's kind of
exactly. Yeah. I don't, it's, and that's with everything that I do. I don't like going full tilt on anything. So even though there's like a lot of sex and violence, I wouldn't consider it like an erotic comic or a porn comic or anything like that. It's going
right.
to be more that you would expect from me. If anything, it's playful, it's mature, but it's still playful and innocent in its own kind of way. It's meant to be entertaining and fun and exciting, not anything else.
Gotcha.
But,
So, oh,
yeah,
sorry. Go
so
ahead. Do you
so
feel that you have completed your style guide? Because we had talked about how you were like, well, I might want to
right.
redo it or whatever. Do you feel you accomplished that phase, or are you still in it?
I'm still in it, but I'm getting there. I feel like I know more of what needs to be in it, and I'm making progress towards it, which is better than where I was at before. And
Right.
I actually have some pages that I haven't posted up here because they have a lot of information on them that I don't want to share,
Sure.
about the story and about the roles of each of these characters and the setting and why I made certain decisions or gave people certain names, etc. And I'm
Right.
compiling it into like a document that I'm going to print out into like I guess what you would consider like a style guide or a style Bible, similar to like what I used to do when I would work in film, where I'd have to compile all this kind of design stuff and blueprint and swatches and whatever, something kind of like that. Um, and it's underway. It has a lot of blank spots in it right now, but it is underway. It's getting done. I'm filling it with things like this that are more definitive concepts of like her costume, the
Right.
costumes of the different characters that are going to be repeating throughout the series. The more important stuff, and then some of the stuff that's actually more, I guess, a little bit throwaway, like they're just going to appear in this issue but not for the rest of the issues. And for those, I'm not doing anything quite like this. It's a lot more rough and just kind of like, yeah, something like this, because
Right.
they're only going to be in like 5 panels. I don't need to diagram that.
Yeah.
um, but yeah, a lot more stuff like this for her, especially some of the stuff that went by was like construction, like how to make her, how to construct her, and not only that, but how to do it so that it's fun for me. Like one of the most important things
Fun.
that I've been struggling with is how can I draw her in a way that it's actually fun to draw,
Right.
because it needs to be playful, it needs to be exciting for me, otherwise like I'm just going to go nuts. And it has to have that kind of feeling to it. I feel like the panels that I've done so far didn't have that feeling. They felt forced and they felt a little stiff and they felt more like me trying to do something that you might see in like Marvel or DC. Not saying that I achieved that, but that was like kind of, I guess, what I was shooting for. And I didn't have fun doing it. It would take me like a couple hours to do a panel that I still wasn't happy with. But
I'm very familiar with that.
yeah. So yeah, so that's that as far as everything that I wanted to share. But I think the only other thing that I wanted to accomplish was actually the print review video, which I did. I posted that on Saturday for Comics Wellspring, which you know very well, and I
Yes.
gave them a soaring review.
Excellent. I haven't watched it yet, but I look forward to it.
Yeah,
Uh, cool. Well, look, one follow up. You have this sort of broad yearly macro plan.
yeah.
And don't. I mean, we're going to get to this, but did you come up with a more small scale weekly plan for what you're going to try to accomplish by next week?
That would have been something that I should have done. Yeah, I
Okay.
overlooked that. I
Well,
did not do that. But
later in the show, you'll make it up on the spot.
yeah, that'll work.
All right, so you basically achieved your goals. It seems like you did more with the design than you even thought you would, because you did the writing kind of design as well.
Yeah,
You got your plan rolling, maybe not as micro specific as would have been useful, but
sure.
we'll call this a success for you.
Yeah, I'd say so because I think in general we what did we say? Like a rough draft of everything, and I
Mhm.
think I at least touched
Yeah.
everything that I needed to touch. One thing I left out was like I had a whole day, literally a whole day, gathering references, which was ridiculous. But it's not something that I do often,
Right.
and it's something that I want to start doing more. And it actually helped because I had this really cool like abstract kind of costume for Sissy, and I've been drawing it and drawing it and drawing it, but I kept getting stuck trying to make it more like to give it more utility and actually make sense of why it looks the way it looks or why
Right.
this is there or that's there. And so actually looking up things like gun holsters and learning the differences between them and different kinds of guns and things like that and different types of gear that people would use in tactical situations or whatever, it really improved the design like a
So
lot.
so not just visual reference, not just here's a gun holster, but like why would you choose certain ones, or why would they be positioned in a certain place? What kind of
Yeah,
like
yeah.
story kind of reference as
Yeah.
well.
And I discovered some really cool guns. I'll
Okay.
share that next week actually that have just blown my other designs out of the water. I'm totally going to start incorporating some of that. So it was fun and I got a much more, even though it's very fantastic, I think it's a more realistic kind of costume, which was actually kind of important to me because you never know. You might have a little close up or a situation where you need a character to do something and it's nice to know how everything works.
Absolutely.
So, yep.
Cool.
How about you, my friend? How did your week go?
It went terrible. I'm gonna go to screen share.
Oh
It
yeah, we
went
didn't go over challenges, but
well. That I guess that'll come next.
sure, sure.
I accomplished everything I said I was going to. Surprisingly, I didn't think I would. We had the show Tuesday. I'll start with this. This is the rough for page 2 of my comic, The Horror A4.
Nice.
So one of my goals was to get 2 pages, quote unquote, penciled. I do it digitally of the Horror A4. So I did get that done. And that's the penciled version, which again, it still needs to be inked and cleaned up. But you could see that copters I actually drew in, and I cleaned up the background and changed the pose a little bit.
Mhm.
So I did accomplish that, and that is something that I worked on a little bit because Wednesday I was on Artcaster, so I ended up finishing it on there.
Nice.
So that was good. So I started kind of strong, and then also on Artcasters, I had started doing some Destroya. This was another thing I wanted to do. Destroya, the Godzilla monster. Wanted to do some studies for him because I need to do a print of him versus Godzilla. And he's very difficult to draw. He's got a lot of weird components, but specifically his head, I always had a hard time with. So I did some body ones too, but this is just to show you the head. And that one I also think I worked on the Artcaster a little bit, so it was good to multitask that way.
Yeah.
And I had 3 art studies I wanted to do just to improve my skills. One being leg muscles, specifically the back of leg muscles, partially because I was working on that image of the horror we just looked at. What I do when I do these art studies is I watch videos and I pull up images, and I'll do one. You can see like the top left. It's like, okay, here's a picture of a bodybuilder, and I kind of copy that. And then here's like a simplification of structures, and I copy that. And then here's a more
Mhm.
detailed one of that. So I try to pull from different sources instead of one book or one artist or one reference image, so that I still don't feel like I 100% have it, but I get kind of a good overall feel when I reference something like that.
Yeah,
That's
that's a
about
good
it.
way to do it.
Yeah. So I got that. And then I also needed to do some Godzilla studies for this specific Godzilla suit for the Godzilla in the Destroyer print. I don't really like that head. I actually could do that head much better. I don't know why it came out so bad. But the body I was pretty happy with, and the foot I hadn't really studied before. So I spent a lot more time on Destroyer than Godzilla because I've drawn Godzilla a bunch of times. But I did put the time in as I said I wanted to. And then another art studies hands. I study hands more than anything else because I feel like I will never 100% understand them.
Mhm.
But similarly, these were all drawn from different references. And this to the bottom left here is some sort of construction technique that I've never seen before. So I just sort of copied it. And then I just, different people talking about different ways to do hands. I was pretty happy with the sword grasping hand. I often have a hard time. I think a lot of artists do like holding a gun or holding a sword, things like that. It's
Yeah,
kind of an awkward thing to
definitely.
do. So I got that done. And then cats. Cats is another thing I've been studying a lot. Like hands, I feel like I could do it, but I never 100% get it. So I studied the paw, which I've never done before, like the anatomy of the underside of the paw.
Hmm.
And while I've looked at the muscles and poses, I've never really looked at the skeleton. So again, I pulled 2 different, like a more of a realistic skeleton and kind of copied that, and then a more of an abstracted breakdown of the skeleton and copied that. And this, I do this, half hour, hour every time I do one of these, and I feel like I'll be doing it forever, and I'll never actually run out of things to study or learn with a lot of these things. But every time I do it, I feel a little bit more comfortable when it's time for me to do it again. And then, oh, that's the finished one. So this is the other big thing I want to do. This is the Horror A4, my kaiju comic. For those that don't know, I'm working on issue 3. This was the roughs for page 3, and then this is the penciled cleanups, which I put a little shading in. And I've also been roughing in the lettering because last time I had some trouble where I had to readjust the art afterwards without, I have a letterer that I work with, but because of the printing, there's sort of borders that you have to make sure to stay within. And like, he did a fine job, but then certain aspects had to be shifted on my end. So I'm trying to just make sure it's there, and I give it to him like this, and he can either follow it or not, but he can at least see what I had in mind and make decisions based on that. So hopefully there'll be less editing later on.
Cool. Yeah. Great plan. It's looking good too.
Thanks. Yeah, this was a weird page because it's very little dialogue. It's mostly just sound effects and stuff, but it's highlighting the monster attacking, the monster being the Horror A4 himself. So I believe that is everything I said I wanted to do. Let me double check. So I had the 3. Yeah. So, and some of that though, I was finishing up today. So I thought I was going to be a failure, and I was not looking forward to that. But if you watched last week, or even if you haven't, I can still tell you, I had kind of cleared up all my client work, and I'd caught up on like housework and all the other stuff. So I kind of had nothing I had to do this week. And I was a little bit more ambitious. I'm like, I'll do all this stuff. And this week ended up becoming crazy. Ox in the comments. Thank you. He's giving me compliments. I appreciate that.
Yes.
So let's segue into that. Was what did we say we were going to do, and we did it. We both succeeded. So go us. Let's talk about challenges. I'll start since I'm already halfway into my sentence. I kind of broke it down by day. So Tuesday last week we did the show, and I didn't feel good. I just felt really sick at night, and I didn't do anything. I just felt awful. Then Wednesday, I felt better, and I did a lot of the work. Oh, I also finished my Pigmon print, which I didn't show. I forgot about that. That was the other thing I did, which I did finish. I'll show it later because I don't want to pull it up right now. But I forgot about that. It was that it's a kaiju that I had started, but I finished, colored everything, and that will become a print that I'll sell eventually. So Wednesday I did the lake study, and I finished Pigmon. I worked on the pencils for page 2. I did the art casters, and I finished the Destroyer. So that was a very, very productive day. I got a lot of stuff done. Even did another show. Come Thursday, there's a lot of stuff that happened this week that I forgot I was going to do, and things that came up. So I had to take Q we only have one car, and I took my wife Q to the doctor in the morning, which I forgot or didn't know I had to do. So that took up time in the morning. And then I had to go to the doctor, but I forgot I had to like fast and do all this other weird stuff to get ready for it. So I basically felt terrible again all day, like physically. But I forced myself. Oh, that was the other thing I had to do is I had a bunch of new Transformers prints to put up on my Etsy store. So I didn't feel good. So I put those Etsy prints up on the store, got that all ready because I was able to sit down, but I just felt terrible. And it was hard to concentrate on learning things or doing finished work, but I could plow through putting stuff up online. So I did that. Here's the other thing. I did the San Jose Super Toy and Comic Show this past weekend. I thought it was this weekend coming up. I made a mistake. So that took out a huge chunk of time. So I had to also, in addition to taking Q and not feeling great and all this other stuff, I had to load up my car with art supplies and toys and everything I was bringing Thursday so that I could bring it Friday. So I loaded up the car. Oh, also Thursday, I teach a class. So I went and taught the class, which I knew I'd have to do, but I didn't know I'd have to do that in between loading up the car and everything else.
Oh, man.
So I didn't get a lot done Thursday. I just got my store set up. So Friday, I had to go into the doctor, and my doctor is down by where the fairgrounds, where the convention is. So I had the car loaded up, went to the doctor, got a bunch of stuff done, felt terrible, and then had to take the car load and unload all my stuff at the show, which took a couple hours. Then I unexpectedly got a caricature job to do that night, about an hour north of me, which is 2 hours north of where I was. So basically, I got up, went to the doctor, did a bunch of stuff, felt terrible, went and did a bunch of physical labor, then ran home, took a shower, changed, and then drove another hour, like was just driving up north, where I did a 3-hour party for a bunch of kids and got home like after midnight, even though I had to get up at like 5:30 in the morning and felt terrible.
Oh my God,
so I didn't do anything on my list Friday rather. Saturday, I had barely any sleep, got up, did the toy show. The adrenaline kind of kept me going. So and it went well. I made some money, sold some art, sold some toys, whatever.
Cool.
Got home at like 7 o'clock or 7 o'clock, literally fell asleep. Just fell asleep, didn't wake up until 9 o'clock the next morning.
Probably.
Yeah, and had a sore throat. I don't know if you could tell, I'm a little bit stuffy. So on top of everything else, I got a cold, probably because I wasn't sleeping and eating and overexerting myself. So Saturday, I did the show, came home, slept, didn't work on any of my stuff. Sunday, similar thing. I did the toy show, and then afterwards I had to break everything down, bring it home, got home, watched a little TV, reruns of The Office, fell asleep. And I was thinking, wow, how ironic that if I fail at this, I will literally have watched reruns of The Office, which was an example I used last time. So Monday, I wake up and I feel sick, like just sore throat, stuffy head, achy, kind of, and just burnt out from everything that I'd done the last few days that I didn't expect to be doing. But I knew we had the show Tuesday, so I had to get some work done. But first, I had to unload the car because I'd left it all in the car because I was so exhausted. So I unloaded all the car, and then I also forgot we had a dryer repairman coming out. So I had to wait for him. And then I don't know if you're like me, but I kind of can't concentrate. I was like, oh, I got to kind of keep an eye on him while he's doing that. So fine. I also had to catch up on some housework, not regular housework, but like I hadn't taken out the trash in like 4 days and the dishes were piled up. So I had to quick, like just kind of triage some of that stuff so we weren't living in squalor. And today is the day to vote in California, but I wasn't going to be able to go today. So I had to quick fill out my stuff and bring it to the mailing thing. So I did that yesterday too. This was all before I got a chance to actually start working on anything. So it was like and the doctor gave me a prescription I had to get, but my pharmacy didn't have it. So I had to drive a half hour to this other pharmacy to get the prescription. So then around 4 o'clock, I was ready to start work. And that's when I did the Godzilla study. That's when I did the hand study. I started work on page 3 and I did the cat and I started the cat study. Woke up today about 9 in the morning and said, oh my God, we have the show. What am I going to do? Didn't do anything but work. I got up, I finished the cat study. I finished page 3. I spent time figuring out how to do this live stream because I've never done it before. Oh, and the other thing which I had said was on my list, which I forgot that I did do, was do a sketch cover. So I did this sketch cover for The Walking Dead,
sweet.
which is a little bit cheating because this is all filled in. I just did the monster face here. And I have a lot of, thank you. I have a lot of sketch covers to do. And this is one of the easier ones. So I picked an easy one to do just so I could hit all my notes. But literally I finished everything I had to do around 2:30 today, then started figuring out how to set this up. So I barely made it, but there's a lesson here. As miserable as I was and as afraid I was going to fail at the challenge on the first week, I got really excited when I finished because I'm like, I had a horrible week. I was sick. I had to go to the doctor. I had to do this toy show. I had an unexpected job that went to midnight. All these crazy life things that I did. Oh, I also forgot. I have a bunch of stuff in my garage, like a couch and a dishwasher. The people were coming to pick that up today. So I had to put it out last night by myself. I just took a bunch of, hauled it out to the curb. Jeez. So all this stuff, physical, mental, and otherwise, and I still got my work done. So let that be a lesson to everyone that's just like, I played video games and felt, tired. Screw you. like I had a really hard week. I had a lot of stuff to do, physically sick, barely, and I got it done. So I have no sympathy for anybody that doesn't get their stuff done because they weren't feeling it.
Yeah. Well, with that said, I think we're going to skip my challenges this week. And hey, great.
No. We're all individuals. Tell me your challenges.
No, that is nuts, man. No, you made a really great point too. And do you find that sometimes when you have all that extra stuff going on, it kind of pumps your adrenaline up and almost makes it easier to get work done when you have the time to do it?
I don't know if it makes it easier, but I've said this before. It does get my adrenaline up, and I feel like I have to get it done. Mm-hmm. It's just it's less of a I should try to do this or be nice or I want to, and it's like no, I have to get this done.
Yeah.
And I get the other stuff I have to do. I get annoyed at, which makes me like get it done quicker. Like all these things keep piling up, and like waiting for the dryer guy to leave. Okay, he finally left. Now I could draw, as opposed to if I just gotten up and eaten a bowl of cereal, I'll be like I'll start drawing in a minute. Like it did add a sense of urgency to as soon as I get done with X, I could start working on the drawing, which I don't normally have in a day where there's nothing going on, and I had something going on every single day. So I definitely felt the urgency every single day.
That's awesome. Yeah, I was feeling the crunch today too. And we were actually talking about that a little bit before we started the show about how I feel like I'm at my best when I have this kind of anxiety going on. Like it's sort of like a sign that I'm in the art zone, I guess.
Right.
I have this anxiety and that anxiety pushes me. It's terrible in like social situations and other things, but it helps me get a lot of work done. But So, all right. Well, geez, my challenges weren't quite that severe, but as I mentioned, in our first episode, a big problem that I've been having is getting back into gear. And sure enough, even with the show, I was still having that trouble at the beginning of last week. I felt like, I've been reaching, I've been trying to find that spark to light the fire under my ass to get going, and I haven't been finding it. But as we got closer and closer to, as I started having less time until the show compared to, when we started it, I
Right.
something just took over and it was like, get stuff done, get stuff done, get stuff done. And it almost like, at the very start of it on Monday and Tuesday actually were pretty bad. I've had some stuff going on in my life, in my family life in the last couple of years, and I also go through depression, which I don't use as an excuse, just stating it as a matter of fact. It's something that I deal with. I should take medication. I don't. I do other things like meditation, exercise, yada yada yada,
Whatever works.
whatever works. And recently it's actually been pretty challenging to get past it. I don't know why, but I'm stuck in what they call ruminating, where you get stuck on a dark thought or a negative thought, and it just keeps looping and looping and looping. And that was happening really really bad. But come like Thursday, just feeling the pressure of this show was
Yeah.
enough. It was enough to just say like, all right, well, whatever, do something, start scribbling something down, which
And
is
that's
a
what
lot of
Cory
like
was
the,
saying in the chat. Cory Kerr,
oh
who
yeah,
kind
yeah.
of started this, it was saying he said, "quote I got to get some work done before the show." Is the genius of this, and I agree. But
Oh
please
yeah,
continue.
totally. And it worked because, and that's why I don't use, at least in my case, that's why I don't use depression as an excuse, because I know there are ways that even when I'm like my own worst enemy, I can
Right.
trick myself out of it somehow. And so that's something that I didn't cover in what I did this week, but I started exercising again.
Mm.
My knee has been killing me for like God, over a year now, and I haven't been doing my walks or my runs and stuff. But I started doing exercises. I started doing like stretching and walking more, and at least just getting outside every day like I used to. And that actually helped to kind of
It's Space
trigger those
Cat.
old patterns. Oh
I'm
yeah,
sorry,
that's the
I got
fuck
excited.
space cat. He's having a little snack. He is another challenge that I'll tell you about today, actually. But so to overcome that, I started exercising more, and I started kind of just instead of falling into this new pattern of not getting stuff done or letting things overwhelm me, I went back to just going through the motions of the old pattern that worked. So woke
Right.
up, got my breakfast, got my coffee, sat down. As soon as I finished that, I started doing my stretches. I got dressed, went out for a walk, came back, took a shower, got to work, because
Yeah,
that's what I used to do when everything was working, good. And that helped. It worked.
that's great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, Big challenge for me though still is doing anything at all on the weekends. It's just
Mm.
that I'm in a kitchen. I'm not in my own space, and so
Right.
it's accessed constantly throughout the day.
Right.
Uh, and plus, Mel and I barely get to see each other. She always works late, so it's usually like I'll go and walk and pick her up from the train, and then that walk home is our time that we've seen each other that day, and then that's it. So I do like spending more time with her on the weekends, and I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing.
Of course
It's
not. That is not a bad thing.
no, not at all.
And if
But
you do
I
enough
do
work
get
during the
less
week,
work done.
but if you do enough work during the week, see, I am a
Exactly.
big believer that you can take the week. Well, it's possible to take the weekend off. I don't always do it. A lot of artists don't always do it. But if you get enough work done during the week, you can guilt-free take the weekend off.
Yeah.
That's just a matter of planning accordingly.
Yep. And that's actually something that I've taken away from this weekend, is just how much I don't want to sacrifice those weekends. And that,
Right.
my solution is that I'm just going to have to work that much harder during the week. And that's that. So I'll cover a little bit more of that when we go into our goals for the next week, actually. But,
Well, okay,
yeah,
sorry, go ahead. I'm gonna say, why don't we do that now? Because we've been running a little long. So
yeah, this is getting a
yeah.
bit long. But yeah, so that's that. Today was just a little hectic trying to get ready for the show, really. And
Same, but like Cory said, that hecticness pushed us both to get what we had to get done. Because with the week I had, I definitely would not have got everything done. I would have got the stuff I got done by like Tuesday last week, and I probably wouldn't have worked on anything else
Mhm.
at all, because I had every excuse in the world except I had the the idea that I was going to talk to you and everybody on the internet, and
Mhm.
I didn't want to look like a chump.
Yeah. And, oh, that was me too. Like, and I had like a bunch of stuff done, but it was all in my sketchbooks. And it wasn't until like maybe an hour before the show started that I
Right.
started scanning everything and trying to get it all together. That I even like kind of realized, oh, you actually did get quite a bit done. Like, not
Right.
all of it's usable, but last week I said that it probably won't be, but at least it's something.
It's work that needed to be done on the path to getting
Yeah.
done. Yeah.
Totally. And I think honestly that cover and the concept of Sissy, those two things were like a total win for me this week. I love the costume. I'm having a lot more fun drawing her too. So
Right.
it was all time well spent, even though it doesn't really amount to much visually, all of that helped.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I agree. All
All
right.
right.
Well, so well, I guess I'll talk about what I want to get done next week because you said you might need a minute to kind of figure out what you want to get done next week.
Oh yeah.
Um, I have a list here, but I'm going to put some caveats. So for next week, what I'd like to get done, ideally, is 2 more pages of pencils for the Horror A4 issue 3. I'd also like to, beginning to end, get an 11 by 17 Godzilla versus Destroya print done. Inks, color, 100% everything. And that's not a small thing for me. That takes a long time. I'd also like to do an art study of Shin Godzilla for another future print, but similar, just working on the design and the body and figuring him out.
Cool.
Another art study of hands, because always hands. Put sketch covers, the one I showed you, plus another 1 or 2 I have done, up on my Etsy store. And edit and put up my San Jose Toy Show video, which on top of everything else, I tried to make a video for the show. So I would like to get that up by next week too. If I have more time, which I don't think I will, but a bonus thing would be to get an Ultraman headshot, a new one to make a print of. So that's assuming nothing goes wrong, everything's great. Now, I am giving myself an escape hatch after what happened this week. There are a couple potential jobs floating around. Again, not huge long-term ones, but short things. And if I get one of those jobs comes through, then I will only do 1 page of the horror, not 2. I'll allow myself that. If I get 2 of these jobs, I will also get rid of the art studies and putting stuff up on Etsy. So I'll still keep all the rest, but I'm allowing that if I get 1 or 2 jobs, I will cut down on my list a little bit to, not make myself go crazy.
You got to be kind to yourself sometimes.
But sometimes you got to be cruel to be kind. So
This is true too. This is true. That's what the 100 days is for.
it's true. What about you? What do you think you want to try to get done for next week?
All right. It's a lot less vague than it was last time. Although,
I like it.
in typical Mike fashion, it's still pretty general. So, all right. So this one's kind of extreme. I don't know if I'm capable of accomplishing this. We'll see. But I would like to make a point to put a minimum, like on the clock, 8 hours a day towards Sisyphean Complex.
Wow.
Whether that's the style guide or thumbnails or whatever, I want to clock in 8 hours of making progress. Not my art studies, not like any of the prep work kind of stuff of like, but like tangible progress, putting it to use, finishing her concept page, finishing the concept for the different soldiers, the building, the different weapons and whatnot that I'm going to need for this next issue. Those kinds of things I'll count. But yeah, and I don't know if I'm going to be able to do that, but I'm going to shoot to get as close as I can to that. So if it's like 6 hours or whatever, fine. But I'm going to try not to be like so forgiving. But yeah, so that's a big one. The other thing is to complete the style guide. I think doing 8 hours a day, that's totally reasonable. I don't have much left to go. I'm not going to complete it for the entire series, but at least what I need for this next issue. I think that's important. And I think thinking back to past jobs that I've had or past assignments in school, even like that's doable. I know that it's doable. And sometimes you just have to get it done. I think having the time constraint will help too. Another thing I'm going to do differently this week compared to last week is art studies. I actually meant to mention art studies last week because I'm already doing them. That's like a big part of what my whole spring and summer has been about. So I'm going through that Michael Hampton. I think it's called analytical figure drawing or something like that.
Oh, you got yours already?
Yeah, the book.
I backed the Kickstarter, but I haven't got mine yet.
Oh, I don't know about that.
Okay,
this is
mind.
like it might be a different book.
Gotcha. Okay.
But he's got I got the video series from Oh, what the hell is it wasn't New Masters Academy. It was on a completely different site. But anyways, I bought it. I bought the video series back in like 2012 and just never got around to it. It was one of those things that I looked at and I'm like, I'm not there yet. Put it on the shelf. I pulled it out recently, and somebody else that I knew through the hundreds actually had done the same, except he had uh, the foresight to download all the class materials as well, which I didn't do. And so there was parts in the video where it said, "Now do the homework," and I'm like,
Uh,
"What's the homework? What should I be doing?"
right.
So ridiculous, but it's 100 gesture drawings. So that's not too bad. I figure on a normal day when I'm doing gestures, I do about like 20, so that
Mhm.
should be no problem. So 100 gestures by next week. Obviously, focusing on the various things that he wants us to focus on in the course, and
Right.
then I got these in the mail today that I'm extremely excited about. These are my watercolor brushes, so I don't have to use
Ah,
my acrylic brushes for watercolors anymore. And I'm trying to teach myself watercolor because I want to color this comic using watercolor. So um,
right.
I used to use it a lot, but I never had any kind of formal training or anything. I just, mostly flat color
Right.
done. But I really want to learn. Like it's something that I've been wanting to do for a very long time and just assumed I couldn't. And so that's one of those things that I'm doing that's like, no, you probably can. Just try and learn it. So
Are you gonna do the watercolor on Bristol, or are you going to draw on like watercolor paper?
I
Or
have some watercolor paper. I got the
okay,
Canson XL. It's not super expensive, but it had decent reviews on it, and I've been using it for a little practice things so far.
cool.
And with the printer that I have now, it actually accepts thicker paper if I put it in the back tray. So when I go to do the comic pages, I'll either print my template or maybe like a really, really light kind of underdrawing or whatever as kind of
Right.
like a guideline. Or I
Are
could
you,
light box it. I don't know yet, but
do you think are you gonna ink it, or are you not gonna have heavy ink lines and just paint?
I would like to ink it. I think I like the look of ink, but I'm gonna let it kind of play out with my studies. I'm gonna see what I'm
Gotcha.
capable of and what that looks like when I'm done,
Mhm.
and kind of go from there. But I probably end up inking it too. Um,
Cool.
and so that I'm not like completely in the dark on this. I don't remember exactly how, but I ended up getting 2 months free on Skillshare, and
Oh,
Skillshare has a ton of watercolor tutorials. So I'm just going to be going through those as my kind of guiding me through it, so that it's not just haphazard.
I, I mean that all sounds good. I do have a question though.
Sure.
Your first goal was to work on the comic for basically 40 hours, 8 hours a day, like a
Right.
full-time job kind of thing, which is great.
Yep.
But on top of that, you want to do 100 gesture sketches and all this other stuff. Like now I'm thinking you may like last week I was like commit to more. Now I'm like you might be committing to too much just in
Yeah.
terms of hours. Like if you're doing eight
Sure.
hours a day of on the comic, that's amazing. And
Sure.
but you're talking about doing on top of that all this other stuff.
Yeah.
Are you going to be working 10 hours a day? I mean, not that you can't, but
Possibly.
okay.
Possibly. Yeah. Um,
All right.
I don't know whether I should classify the watercolor practice as working towards the comic. I'm interested in what your thoughts might be on that, because I
Well,
am studying this specifically to color the comic, but
I'll,
it
I'll give you
feels
the
wrong to me.
I'll give you the positive answer and the negative answer. Okay.
Okay, sure.
So you come to me and I'm your positive friend,
Uh-huh.
and you're like, hey, I'm going to do this watercolor practice for the comic. Does that count? Absolutely, it counts because you're learning to do it for this comic. You don't know how to do it. You're
Sure.
working on this project. You can't finish the project if you don't know how to do watercolor. So how
Sure.
does that not count? It absolutely counts. You can't make the comic without learning to do this. You have to learn to do this. It's part of the comic. Absolutely.
I'll
Here's
be
the
the negative friend and say,
okay.
well, you don't have to watercolor it. And if you're looking to make real progress, you can just fucking color it in Photoshop like you know you can. And this is a massive waste of time.
That's exactly right. That is exactly right. I
Yeah,
wouldn't say it's a massive waste of time because having more art skills is always good,
sure.
but it is like one more thing you're throwing on the pile.
Exactly.
Like, why
And
add to it?
I
So
feel like
that's yeah,
in some cases, because you and I talk about this a lot in terms of like the 100 days and what counts for the 100 days, it's
right.
totally one of those things that's like, I mean, it kind of counts, but not really. Like you could do
Right.
that and something else that's more tangible and
Right.
actually,
If
produces
you're doing
something.
watercolor practice and you could show, hey, I painted her, costume and tried to make the leather look a certain way, or I painted some
Right.
atmospheric backgrounds, that's a lot more tangible. But if you're
Yeah.
just doing strokes of color or flowers or something that has
Yeah.
nothing to do with it, that's a little
No.
bit harder to count.
Which I
Yeah.
probably will actually. One of my things that I want to do, and that is part of the style guide, is going to be doing tests. I want to do
Right.
panels that are, essentially finished of what exactly it is that I'm going for. And I think that's valid. But
Yeah.
yeah, like fades and washes and trees and what there's not even any trees in this world that I'm creating. So
Right.
but yeah, so all right, so that's not going to count towards it. I think I think it's doable. I think doing 8 hours a day in order to complete the style guide, I may even complete the style guide before the week is up.
Sure.
But the art studies, the 100 gestures, I mean, I can do 20 of them in maybe 1 to 2 hours.
I'm not
So
saying it's impossible, but you
it's,
just made my point though that if you do 8 hours and then do 20 gestures in 1 to 2 hours, like you're setting yourself up for 9, 10 hour days
yeah,
if you do
long
what you say
days.
you want to do. Which again, people do all the time. I'm just
Sure.
making sure we're clear on what you're setting yourself up for.
Yeah. Well, I also said that the 8 hours a day is kind of like I'm trying to hit that target. I don't know
Right.
if I can. If I'm burnt out on doing Sisyphean Complex and at like the 5 hour mark,
Right.
I'm not gonna force it because I know what that's the recipe for. I know
Right.
that feeling. I know that that's probably not gonna amount to any more after that. But
Right.
I'm gonna try. I'm gonna see if I can make that happen. And I think by shooting high, I'll get more done anyways, even if it is,
That's yes. I
so
agree with that. I absolutely agree with that.
but we'll
Um,
see.
cool. All right. Well, so we
How
have,
about you, sir?
how about me? What? I already
Oh
said
yeah,
mine.
we already did that.
You don't even listen when I talk.
I did. I swear.
No, we both we went over what we did from last week. We went over challenges, and now we've both outlined what we'd like to do for next week.
We
I'm gonna
did.
real quick share this. This is the Pigmon print I was talking about, just so everybody can see that I did indeed do it.
Nice.
And it will eventually be available for sale, but not right now. Okay, good. That was that. And we do have some people in the chat that have been hanging out, which we appreciate, and chatting with. Oh, Cory just says something. Cory says, anyone else start going down the mental rabbit hole of why there aren't any trees in this world?
Well,
Yeah.
you'll find out in it. I don't even know.
Sometimes you have answers, sometimes you don't. I think we're going to end it, but if anybody in the chat has a question, we could end with a little quick Q&A, real now, quick.
Real now, quick stuff.
Did it, Q&A. Did it.
You
For
can only
today.
ask questions that are 168 characters long. Go.
And while we're waiting for that to come through, we'll be meeting again next week. Probably again Tuesday. Probably again around this time.
Yeah.
It'll be on Mike's channel, Mike Emirates Art, which you're on my channel now, so you know where I am. But he has his own channel. I'll put a link below when I post up. And well, also, where else can we find you on the internet?
You can find me everywhere.
Oh, good.
Start at spacecatcomics.com. That's actually a nice way to, well, it's my store, but then on the left side of the store, you'll find links to most of my other social media places.
Cool.
Another place, and this isn't a plug, it's a matter of fact kind of thing. I'm not actively trying to plug my Patreon right now, but on my Patreon, that's actually where I'm sharing a lot more about this particular comic. I've kind of made a pact with my Patreon people too that I'm not going to share a whole lot of stuff publicly, that I'm only going to share it there. And as I finish pages, I'll be posting there and stuff too. And I did plug it. I said I wasn't going to plug it, but that was totally.
I forgive it because of the insane amount of alliteration with the letter P. You're like, my Patreon people, I don't want to put publicly pages because I promised them that I won't plug it. And I was like, he's not even doing it on purpose.
It was
it's amazing.
All planned, I swear.
With a P.
How about you? Where can we find you?
Well, you're on my YouTube channel, so you know that. And
Hey,
I'm pretty much Gazbot everywhere, Instagram and Etsy. And I have a Patreon, but don't go there. It's stupid. If you want to give me money, buy something off my Etsy store. And I'm on it, Facebook and all the stupids. All the stupids. Just look up Gazbot on the stupids. This has been very long, but hopefully it's been informative. I know it helped me get work done that I wouldn't have got done with this week.
Me too.
And so, you should check out the 48-hour what is it? I don't know what the title. The Josh Kemble,
48
Cory.
Horror Tech.
There you go. And I'll put a link to that as well. But also our buddy Chris McQuinlan and Marshall Lee of Donkey Jaw Projects, they have started doing their own as well. I think they're doing it weekly as we are too. I'll put a link to that below as well. So you got 3 options. You could use them all. You could pick and choose, mix and match, whatever you want. This is art in your face when you want it, how you want it, a la carte.
That's right, with onions and special sauce.
And this has been us for 168.
All right.
168. Bye, everybody.